Hello, my name is Rod Schaefer, and welcome back. This is part 4 of the Laravel 5.6 simple blog tutorial, which is a real-world application. It's fully responsive, which means it looks good on every device, cell phone, tablet, computer. So where we left off from part 3, we were pretty much here at this point. This was our main page of our site, which is pretty much the default Laravel page. And then we had our login form, which looks similar to this right here. And we had our register form that looks similar to this. Now, what we're going to do is if I open up my blog into another browser window, and I just click on the blog drop down and I hit all articles. It happens to be the top most article right now at this point in time, but it's simple blog part 4. So we want to go ahead and we want to click on that because we're going to use that as a guideline as we work through this. Okay, so I basically just, in the article, at the top of the article, I show where we left off after part 3. This is basically what the site looked like. And then by the time that we're done with this part, we are going to have a site that looks similar to this. This is what our index page is going to look like. Right there. It's going to look similar to that. And then the login page is going to look similar to this. And then the new register page is going to look similar to the following, this right here. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to create a site-wide Blade layout file. Blade is Laravel's templating engine, and it's very good. You can factor out pieces of your site that are the same across every page, for example, and then you can just insert it into every page. It's very nice, and it also makes things a little bit quicker. For example, let's say you have a nav bar on your site at the top, like I do similar to my blog here. And let's say you have a bunch of drop downs going across here. Well, that file can get very, very, very long, and it can be very hard to narrow down the information you're looking for when you go to make changes. And with breaking it down into separate pieces like this, it makes it easier to modify later on down the road. So what we're going to do is first we're going to open up PHP Storm. Everyone should know by now that's my integrated development environment. So I'm going to go ahead and open up PHP Storm. And then once this welcome to PHP Storm window opens, I'm going to go ahead and select the L56 tutorial. That's the folder that I put the tutorial into. And then I'm going to close the tip of the day out. And when we left off, if we look under the resources views folder and in the layouts folder, there was an app.blade.php in there, the layout file that Laravel basically gave us for free when we installed the new application. We're going to go ahead and make some modifications to that. So we want to go ahead and double click on it to open it up in the editor pane. And we want to go ahead and say edit and select all, and then just delete what is there. And then if we go back to my blog article, and we scroll down the page just a little ways, I show you right here what we had, the old version. And then just a little bit below that, we have the new one. So here's the new layout. So we want to go ahead and we want to copy all this. And then we want to go back into PHP Storm and paste it into app.blade.php. And if I scroll up to the top, I'm just going to briefly explain what we did here. So this basically was pretty much the default Laravel application layout. The only changes I did is I put an extra Blade directive, yield directive in here to insert extra meta tags if we need. So for example, when we do get our blog portion of the site developed, and we can create new articles, there's going to be an article author. So if I'm writing the article, I happen to be the author, and there's going to be a meta tag, an author meta tag, And I'm going to go ahead and insert that into here in the page. And then I'm also going to have a little section where you can write a short description about what the article is about. And that is going to be a meta description tag. And so then I'm going to go ahead and put a meta description tag in there as well. And then since every page is going to have a different title, they're not all going to be the same. I did an @yield blade directive for that one as well. So that way we can insert a different page title for every page. And then next we have, this was already in there, this is our application-wide CSS styles. So that way they get loaded in on every page. And then the next part was already there as well. This is the Internet Explorer 8 HTML5 shim, basically. So that way we have HTML5 elements and media queries. And then just below that, inside the body section, we have a header, because every page is going to have a header running across just below the nav bar. Then we have the nav bar. Then we have a content area. And then we have a footer. So every page is going to have a footer on the bottom. We have an about link in there. Right now, we could add other ones in there, for example, like contact us. Anything you want to put in there, you could actually change the whole design around if you want in the footer. We're just designating a spot here saying that we're going to put it into the page there. And then we have our application-wide JavaScript. And then just below that, I added another @yield directive script called script footer. This is an area that we can put in extra JavaScripts at the end of the page if we needed. For example, we had one page that needed, say, a special script or something. We can go ahead and then insert that onto the page with that directive right there. Okay, so now that we have the layout pretty much done, and I basically explained that in here, what I just explained to you in my article as well. So the next thing that we're going to do is we need to create our navigation bar, our header, and our footer for our page. And the way that we're going to do that is under this resources views folder. So if we just click on the views folder to highlight it, keep our mouse pointer over top of the views folder and right click and say new directory. We're going to create a new directory and call it partials. And this is going to be our partial pages, like the nav bar, for example. So then what we want to do is, if we go back to my blog article and we scroll down the page just a little ways here, you will see the first one we're going to do is the nav bar. So I'm going to copy this. This is the name of the blade template we're going to give it, is _navbar.blade.php. So I'm going to just copy the name of the file. And with my mouse pointer on top of the partials folder, I'm going to right click and say new file. And I'm going to go ahead and paste the name of the file in there. And I'm going to say OK. And then I'm going to expand this partials folder so you can see it in there, _navbar.blade.php. And so I'm just going to click back over here in the editor pane to get my cursor back over there. Go back to my blog article. And we're going to go ahead and copy this new nav bar layout. And paste that in here. And so this pretty much is the basic nav bar that we already had with our Laravel app. I just took it out of the layout and I basically separated it on its own and put it into its own file to make it easier to manage it. So then the next one that we want to do is we want to do the header. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this _header.blade.php. And the same thing on the partials folder, I'm going to put my mouse pointer over top of it, right click and say new file, and paste the name of the file in there and say OK. And then we have our new blank _header.blade.php file. So I'm going to go back to my blog, and you'll see here this is for the header one. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all this information in here in this box. And I'm going to paste it into there. And nothing fancy going on here, really. Just, I created a couple of styles, CSS styles to style it. And it's pretty much our company name with a link. So they can click on the company name and it takes them to the main page of the website. And then their slogan and also like a background or logo image and a background image. And I load the background image in the CSS styles, which I'll show you in a little bit here. So that's the header one. And then the last one we're going to do is we're going to do this underscore footer.blade.php. So let me go ahead and copy that. And then the same thing, put my mouse pointer over top of the partials folder, right click and say new file, paste that into there and say OK. And then we have our underscore footer.blade.php. I'm going to go back to my blog and I'm going to copy the footer and paste it into there. And then same thing, nothing real fancy on this. I just basically set up a little section at the bottom where you can put links in there to other pages like about, contact us, for example. And then we just below that, another div with the copyright in there and our domain name, etc. So we pretty much basically have all the partials completed now. So we should be left with that directory structure right there under partials. We'll have those 3 files in there. So now we're going to modify the login, the register, and then when someone clicks the link that says forgot password, there's also 2 pages for that as well. We're going to go ahead and modify those as well with our new design and layout. So what we want to do is we want to go back to the PHP Storm, and then under resources views, you see this auth folder right here. We want to go ahead and expand that. And then you might as well go ahead and expand the passwords one as well, since we need to modify all 4 of these. The first one we're going to do is the login.blade.php. So if we just double click on that to open it, edit, select all, and then just backspace to delete that out of there. We're going to go down here, and this is the first one, login. So we're going to go ahead and copy this. And paste that into login. Then we're going to open up the register one. Same thing, we're going to edit, select all, backspace, and delete it out of there. And we're going to go ahead and get the login one. So that's this one right here. And paste that into there. Then we're going to do the email.blade.php one. So you'll see, if we go down a little ways here, actually, did I get the right one? Okay, this is the login one. I think I might have copied the wrong one somewhere. So I'm just going to repeat this real quick. Edit, select all, paste the login one. Do the register one. I might have copied the wrong one, I think. So then here we have the register one. So go ahead and copy all that. Okay, that's the register one. Now we're going to do the email one. So if you go down a little ways, you'll see here, email. There's the email one. So we're going to go ahead and copy that one. Edit, select all, delete it out of there, and then paste it in. And close that one out. Then we're going to do the reset one. So if we scroll down, the next one is the reset one. So we're going to go ahead and copy all that. Same thing, edit, select all, clear it out, and then paste that into there. Okay, so now we can close that up. We're done with that. Now what we want to do is we're going to be changing the routes. So here is the routes or the web.php routes file that we had before with our default Laravel application. And we're going to be getting rid of this main page route. It's a closure. So whenever you have in your web.php, you have this route, and then inside of there you have a function like this. That's a closure. And we're just returning a view file, which we don't want. We want our own dedicated controller class. So we're going to change all of our routes to a dedicated controller class. So if you scroll down just a little ways here, you will see that we made the main page of our site. We created a designated controller class called page controller. And we have a method called index for that. And then we gave the route a name. We named the route page.index. And the nice thing about the named routes is you probably want to get into the habit of giving all your routes a name. And the reason for that is I'll try to give as good an example as I can. So let's say, for example, on here, I have under my help on my blog, I have this help section here right now. And when I set up my routes, I didn't give it a name. So let me go back into this routes here. I didn't give it a name. So I didn't name it home, for example, like they did here. I took that off of there. So I deleted that all off of there. And so the only way I could get to it is by putting in my domain name /home. And then say 6 months from now, I come back and I want to modify that. And I want to change this to home-rod for whatever reason. Well, now I have to go back through every single one of my pages and update the links that I have in my pages to home-rod now, because home will no longer work. If I gave it a name, a route name, I could change this. I could make it whatever I want, and I could change the name of the method to whatever I want. I could change it from index to banana if I wanted. And as long as in my pages I used routes, I wouldn't have to modify any of my pages at all. Everything would still work because I'm using the named route. So that's why you want to get into the habit of that, because if you change something later on and you don't use named routes, you go back later on to modify things, you'll have a bunch of changes because you'll have to go through all your pages and look for those links and update them. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and say edit, select all. I'm going to clear that out. I'm going to go back to my blog, and I'm going to copy this new routes file. And I'm going to paste it into there. And what we did is, so we not only made a page controller, we also made a dashboard controller and a route called /dashboard. So what that is when a user comes back to your site that is already registered and they log in, this is the main page they're going to see after a successful login. So I also gave it a name of index for the function, but I gave it a route name of dashboard, so I could change this to whatever I wanted down the road. And as long as I'm using this in my pages, the route I'll show you later on, I'll explain a little bit more in detail about it, everything would be fine. So now that we have the routes file, the web.php routes file updated, I'm just going to go ahead and close up all these folders. We want to actually create the controller classes. We created the routes, but we didn't create the controller classes for them yet. So the first, before we do that, we're going to be working up here underneath the app folder. So if you expand the app folder and then expand the HTTP folder and then expand the controllers folder, you'll see that home controller in there that we got when we installed our Laravel app. We're going to delete that because we're no longer going to be using it. So if I just right click on the file and say delete, when this little delete box pops up, If there's any check marks in these boxes, I'm going to go ahead and remove them and say OK. And that will get rid of it. And so then we're going to be creating two new folders in here. We're going to create one called Dashboard. So I'm going to right click on Controllers. So under App HTTP Controllers, I'm going to put my mouse pointer over top of Controllers. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say New Directory. And I'm going to call this Dashboard with a capital D. So the first one is Dashboard. Then I'm going to repeat that process. So go back to the Controllers, App HTTP Controllers folder, put your pointer over top of Controllers and right click and say New Directory. And the second one we're going to call Page with a capital P. So Page with a capital P. And then I'm just going to click on the newly created Dashboard folder that we made. And I'm going to go back to my blog article and scroll down the page just a little ways. And I'm going to copy this dashboard controller.php and go back to PHP Storm. And with my mouse pointer over top of dashboard, I'm going to right click and say New File. And I'm going to paste the name of that file in there. It's dashboard controller.php. And then I'm going to expand this so you can see that it's in there. And then I'm going to go back to my blog article, and you'll see that this is for the dashboard controller. So I'm just going to copy this code that's below it here in this window, and I'm going to say copy, and I'm going to paste that into there. And we did use in the construct method for the dashboard controller, we did use the auth middleware because we want the user to be authenticated to be able to reach this page, the dashboard.index page. And so then if we go back to our our web.php routes file, and you'll see in here that we said when anybody types in our domain /dashboard, we're going to call this function index inside a dashboard controller. So we call this function index, and then we're going to return a view, which is going to be in this resources folder here. We haven't created it yet, but it's going to look for a folder named dashboard inside of here, inside of views, which we didn't create it yet. And then we're going to create a file called index inside of dashboard, index.blade.php, and it's going to load that. Now, you'll notice that when in our controller classes, if we're returning a view, we don't put the .blade.php on there because Laravel already knows that it's going to be a Blade layout file or template file. So we don't need to put that on there. Okay, so then we're going to go back and we're going to repeat this process for the page controller. So we're going to go back to my blog, scroll down just a little ways. I'm going to copy the name of the file out of here, pagecontroller.php, and I'm going to go back to PHP Storm, and under the app HTTP controllers page folder, I'm going to put my mouse pointer over top of page, right click, and say New File. And I'm going to paste in that pagecontroller.php and say OK. Then I'm going to expand this, and you're going to see that it's in there. And so then I'm going to go back to my blog, and I'm going to copy everything that's inside of this box right here. And I'm going to paste it into the page controller. And you will see that we have three methods in there. We have index, about, and help. Now, I don't think I laid out the help one onto the navigation bar at this point in time, but we have it set up that we could create a help page if we need to. Right now, we just have the index page and the about page. So now that we have that in there, we're going to go ahead and close it out, and you'll see that we have the index and the about methods in there. So now that we have the actual controller classes created, we're going to actually create the pages for them. So if we go back to PHP Storm, and we can just collapse everything, make it easier, and then go to Resources, Views, and highlight the Views folder with your mouse pointer over top of Views, right-click and say New Directory. And the first one is going to be called dashboard, all lowercase. I'm going to repeat that process. We're going to right click on the views folder again and say new directory. And the second one is going to be called pages with an S on the end, all lowercase, pages. So now we have the dashboard directory in there and the pages directory. So the first one we're going to do is the dashboard one. So if we go back to my blog article, you will see this first index.blade.php is for the dashboard. So we want to copy everything that's in this box right here and paste that into a new file under dashboard. So if we have our mouse pointer over top of the dashboard folder under the resources views folder, we're going to say new file, and we're going to name this index.blade.php, all lowercase. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to paste that into there. And so then we're going to go ahead and close that one out. And that pretty much takes care of the dashboard. We only had that one index page for right now. So if we scroll down a little ways further here on my blog article, we're going to do the pages one next. So the first one is going to be index.blade.php. So if we go back and put our mouse pointer over top of resources, views, pages, and right click and say new file, we're going to name it index.blade.php, all lowercase. And I'm going to go back to my blog article, and I'm going to go ahead and copy everything that's in this box. And I'm going to paste it into there. And then I'm going to close that out, and you'll see that we have it in there now. Now the next one I'm going to do then is the about.blade.php. That is for the about page. And so I'm going to go back to PHP Storm, highlight the resources, views, pages folder with my mouse pointer over top of pages folder. I'm going to right click and say new file. And that one's going to be about.blade.php, all lowercase. And I'm going to go back to my blog article, and this box right here is for the about page. So I'm going to go ahead and copy everything that's in here. And paste that into the about page. And then I'm going to close that out. And then so then we have about and index.blade.php in there. So we're pretty much done with our pages then. So then these, before we go any further, under resources views, you'll see this home.blade.php and welcome.blade.php. We're no longer using them, so we're going to go ahead and delete each one of them out of there. And we should be left with a directory structure like this right here. Under dashboard, we should have index.blade.php, and then pages, we should have the about and index.blade.php. Okay, so now that we have everything modified, we're going to go ahead and get our system set up to bundle our assets for the first time, because as we work through our project and we change our design around, etc., we're going to need to rebundle our assets. So we're going to get everything in place so that we can do that. And so then if we first go back to PHP Storm and we expand the resources folder and then the assets folder, and the .js folder in there is for our site JavaScript. I'm not going to really be modifying that right now at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and collapse that. I'm just going to open up this SAS folder, which holds our CSS basically for our site. I'm going to double click on this app.scss, and here's the pretty much default one that we got when we installed our Laravel application. I'm going to go ahead and edit, select all of that, and I'm going to delete it out of there. Go back to my blog article. And you'll notice that this is for the app.scss. So I'm going to go ahead and copy everything that's in this box here. And these are pretty much just some CSS styles that I created to make the site look a little bit better. And so then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste that into there. Close that out. And then the next one we're going to do is this underscore variables.scss, which is the bootstrap for variables. So we can change like the styling and stuff with the Sass variables for bootstrap 4. That's what this is. So we're going to highlight everything in there and we're going to delete it out. And we're going to go back to my blog article. And you'll see that this is the one for variables.scss. So I'm going to go ahead and copy everything in this box right here. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it into there. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close that out. And then I'm going to collapse the resources folder. So the last thing that we're going to do before we bundle our assets is, if you look in PHP Storm under the root folder for your web application, go all the way down, you will see a package.json file in here. And what that is it's a file that installs our node dependencies, or what node dependencies our application requires. We're not going to use Axios, we're not going to use Lodash, and we're not going to use Vue. So we're going to go ahead and remove them. And if you look back at my blog article and you go down a little ways, you'll see I explain that. Here's the original, and then here's the new dev dependencies. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to highlight this whole dev dependencies section, right click and paste that into there. And then that got rid of the Axios, the Vue, and Lodash. So then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close that out. And then I had done this previously, so I already have the node modules folder there. So I'm going to right click on it and say delete it. And just a little note, you can always come back and do that. You can always delete the node modules folder. And then if you're using Yarn, it'll put this yarn.lock in there, which locks your dependencies basically. I'm just going to highlight the yarn.lock, right click on it and say delete. And then if there was check marks in here, I would take them out and say okay. And basically I'm back to the point again that I could reinstall my node modules if I need to. So if you go back to my blog article, we have pretty much two ways we could do it. We need to be in the root folder for our web application. And we could either use npm install, or we could use yarn install. And yarn is the new dependency manager for Node. It's a lot better. I'm going to use yarn. It's faster. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this yarn install. And while I'm in the root folder for my site, paste that into there. And I'm going to hit enter. And this will go out on the internet, look at all the node modules, pull in the ones that we're requiring. If there's any dependencies, they'll pull those in as well. And then it'll compile everything for us. So it takes a little bit. And you'll see now that we have our node modules folder in there. And it completed in 37.24 seconds. So now we have our node modules and the yarn.lock files there again. So now at this point, we're all set up there where we could actually bundle our assets for the first time. So the way that we're going to do that is if you scroll down the blog article a little ways, you will see yarn run dev. Now we could either do npm run dev or we could do yarn run dev, and I'm going to continue using yarn because it's better. So I'm just going to go ahead and clear the screen out real quick. I'm going to paste that into there. However, before I run this, I just want to show you something. If I expand the public folder and I expand the CSS folder, you will see that we already had app.css in there. That was already in there when we installed our Laravel application. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then if you look under the JS folder, which is JavaScript, we have our app.js file in there. I'm going to go ahead and delete that as well. That was in there from our default Laravel application installation. Now, it's not really a requirement to do that. I'm just doing it to show you that when we bundle these the first time, it's going to put a fresh copy of them in there. So then I'm going to go ahead and run yarn run dev. It'll come up and say it's building the modules. And then it's completed, and it'll tell you how long it took. And here's our app.js and our app.css. And so now if I look in here, there's our app.css, and there's our app.js file. So that means at this point in time, we should now be able to open our web application in a web browser and see the changes that we made. So if we did everything correctly, this is going to look totally different. It's going to look similar to how I showed you it was going to look up here. It's going to look similar to this right here. So just a quick note, I use Chromium, which is very similar to Chrome. And it's very, very touchy when you make changes. It stores things in the cache and doesn't like to get rid of them. So we could hit the refresh button here and it may not load all of our changes in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and I on my keyboard, and that brings up Chrome DevTools. And so then I can put my mouse pointer over top of the reload button here and hold my mouse button, left mouse button down, and say empty cache and hard reload. And that clears the cache out. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes you still have to mess around a little bit. It's a little bit temperamental. But as you can see, here's the new layout for our site, the new design. And we just basically have a shell in place. So this is a link. They can click on this and it opens up a new window. It takes them to the main page of our website. We could put our own custom slogan in there. We can make up a nice little logo and put in there. And then we can change this down here. We can put whatever information in that we want. I did only create an about page, but we could put other links in down here. We could put about, contact us, anything that you would want to put in here. You could change this whole design around. You could totally change this at the bottom of the page if you want. You could totally change any of this around if you would like. I'm just basically getting us a nice base to work on and modify. So now if I go to the login link, you will see our new login page. And if I go to the register link, you will see our new register form. And I'm not quite sure why this is doing this, but these are required fields too, and it should have the asterisk on there, the red asterisk. So if we go back to PHP Storm, expand the resources, views, auth, and then double click on the register.blade.php file. And if I scroll back up here to the username field, you'll see this L56T, which stands for Laravel 5.6 tutorial. So I put that on the front of all my CSS classes, and this stands for form field required. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy that. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it on the first name one too, because that's required. And I'm going to go ahead and put it on the last name one as well. That's required as well. So now if I go back and I refresh this, you'll see that it's still stuck in the cache, the old page. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to just do the empty cache and hard reload and get it to work. You can see it didn't work. So there's some other tricks and things you can do, but I'm not going to get into that at this point in time right now. So, but you can see that everything is there, and we could log in at this point in time if we already registered. We can register. And so let's see if we get this to work. I'm just going to quickly go through, put one in here. Just make up a password. Register, and then yep, it was successful, and it brings us right to the dashboard page. So that was this page that we created right here. That's this page right here. So when a user successfully logs in, it takes them to the dashboard. And then under the user's name over here on the right, we could go to the dashboard page, and then we can log out. We're going to add a couple of other ones underneath here eventually, but for now, that pretty much concludes the fourth part of the tutorial series. I hope you enjoyed the series so far, and I will see you in the next video.